Okay, thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much for the organizers. I'm very honored to talk about my paper. And this is going to work with Barry Eichengreen at UC Berkeley and Donghyun Park at ADB. Well, let me start with the introduction. One of the most important trends of the world economy is that emerging markets are rapidly growing. But the question arises that how long this rapid growth can continue. So middle income trap, and all eyes are on China. This kind of concern is there. So recently we wrote a paper based on international historical experience of growth slowdowns up to 2007. And the data is based on panel table 6.3. And there we found that slowdowns are very frequent, and it occurs around the level of per capita GDP, $16,500 US dollars. And median is about $15,000. So China's figure is $8,500 in 2007, and it grows at 10%. Then it takes about 7 years to double up. So China's per capita GDP these days must be around maybe 15,000. So they are very close. So we, in the previous paper, we examined what are the correlates of growth slowdowns, and we found that the growth rate is higher before slowdown, then it is more likely, the likelihood of slowdown increases. And unfavorable demographics, aging, is also positively affecting slowdown. And high investment rates, that also increases the likelihood of slowdown. And finally, undervaluation of the exchange rate also increases the likelihood of a slowdown. So in this paper, we revisit the same questions, but why do this? Why do we do this again? Because the concerns about slows continue to grow, even for China, and we have more and better data. We now use the panel table 7.1, which can allow us to use the data up to 2010. And we considered some more additional determinants of slowdown, like the structure of human capital, structure of exports, financial and political stability, and external shocks. And to summarize our paper, our new results are broadly consistent with our old paper. And we also found that a slowdown occurs around this $15,000 range. But we also found that there's additional move around US dollar 11,000. And we also found some new findings, and we found that human capital matters. Especially, you have the high quality human capital, that it can reduce the probability of slowdown. And high-tech technology also matters. So you have high-tech exports, then it can also reduce the probability of slowdown. And finally, we also considered financial crisis and political regime changes, that also affect the probability of slowdown, but they are not very much robust. So for the rest of the presentation, I have 5 parts. I will talk about data and methodology, and then I will talk about the new list of slowdowns and compare them with old list. And I'll talk about correlates, then move on to regression analysis, and then conclude the paper. So data and methodology. How do we define slowdown? We follow Hausman, Pritchett, and Roderick, but they are interested in growth accelerations. But we are interested in growth deceleration. So we use the symmetric analysis. So we we require basically 3 conditions to define a growth slowdown. The first condition is that this is the growth rate between T minus N and T, and it's 7. So 7-year average growth rate before slowdown must be greater than 3.5%, which means that, earlier growth should be fast to define growth slowdown. The second condition is that this is the 7-year average growth rate before slowdown, and this is the 7-year average growth rate after slowdown. The difference should be greater than 2%. So 2% decrease in 7-year growth rate, that is the growth slowdown. And third requirement is that per capita GDP is greater than $10,000, because if the per capita level is lower than $10,000, then there are many other non-economic factors that can influence on growth rate. So we want to remove those kind of episodes. So this is the table 1 in the paper, and we listed all the countries. This is very long table, and we listed all the cases we identified as slowdowns, and this is the cases we identified based on Pan-World Table 6.3, and this is the cases we identified based on Table 7.1, and these are the cases which are identified in both cases. So there are some differences. And actually we explained some, individual cases, but I don't think I have time to do that. But in some cases, like here, for Chile, there is a string of years that are identified as growth slowdowns. In this case, we employed Cho test to identify one single year, which is most significant. And then we construct slowdown dummy, and that takes value 1 for T, that is slowdown year, and T minus 1 and T plus 1, because those years are not very much distinguishable from each other. And I assign 0 for other years. And then I remove data for T plus 2 up to T plus 7, because those years are transition period. And that is the growth slowdown dummy. And then I compare these to other countries that did not experience growth slowdown in that same year. And we did lots of robust checks, like, when we use, consecutive years instead of employing Cho test. We did report the cases when all countries are removed, and we report cluster robust standard errors that account for the panel structure. And there are many individual cases, but I like to skip this. Then what do we find? And as I said, there are many slowdowns, and if they occur, they are very large. So the medium slowdown growth rate, the mean growth rate slowdown is about 3.6 percentage points, and the median is about about 3.5% or something like that. And let me show the figure. So this is the frequency distribution of growth slowdowns when you employ the Cho test to identify the single year. And there are many cases around here, but this is the one of the moves. We think there are many slowdowns. There are many slowdowns occur, and it's between about 1500 and 1700. And there is another mode here, which is about 11,000 US dollars. So one difference from the previous paper is that we find another mode which is new, $11,000. And we explained the reasons why we find this kind of mode based on new data. But I'd like to skip this. And what are the findings? Before we move on to regression analysis, let me show you some simple statistics. So this is summary statistics based on full sample. And this is the summary statistics based on slowdown countries. And we have, I don't know whether you can see the variables here, but I calculate all the variables, the mean and standard deviation, maximum, minimum for all the variables here. And what we find is that, when the slowdown occurs, slowdown countries have a higher than average GDP per capita. So their GDP per capita is about 2/3 of the US, the leading country. And they are growing faster than average, the non-slowdown countries. And they are more open to trade. And they are, there is some evidence that they are less likely to experience some political changes. But we'll show some more interesting results based on regression analysis. So let me skip this and move on to regression analysis. So here we use the probit panel regression. So the dependent variable here is the slowdown dummy, and try to see what variables affect on the likelihood or probability of slowdown. And basically the basic variable is per capita GDP. So what level of per capita GDP, the likelihood of slowdown peaks. And sometimes we use the level of per capita GDP, or alternatively we use the ratio to the US to see at which ratio the probability peaks and so on. And we report both the consecutive year case and individual true test dates, and we report regression including both the level of per capita GDP or the ratio, and we also report the non-oil exporting countries case, and when the cases where we include all export countries as well. And in table 3, we try to replicate what we found in the previous paper, and basically we found very consistent results. So in the previous paper, we found that high investment ratio increases the likelihood of slowdown. We found the same phenomena based on the new data. And on the valuation of exchange rate also matters in the new data. And this dependence ratio, demographics also matter. So that you have high old age dependence ratio, then slowdown is more likely. We also find the same results here. And we find that more open economies are less likely to slow down. And again, we find, in the previous paper, and we find the consistent results here again. And additionally, we added some other explanatory variables, like human capital. So in table 4, we added years of schooling, of total years of schooling, but it was not significant. But we separate them into total years and higher secondary and higher years. Then this second variable is negative and significant, which means that if you have more university attendees and graduates, then on average, the likelihood of slowdown is lower. And the political regime change also matters. And here again, we have two types of political changes. One is the positive political change, which is moving away from autocracy toward democracy. And the second type is negative political change, that is moving from democracy towards autocracy. And when we put just political regime change together, without differentiating between these two, it was not significant. But only positive political change was significant, and that was the that has positive coefficient, which means that more democracy is increasing the likelihood of slowdown, which is a little bit surprising. But if you look at our case in 1987, we had more democratization at the time, but we had more action in labor, and we had higher production costs. And actually, the slowdown we identified in Korea was in 1989, around this time. And external factors, let me skip here, not many interesting or robust results here. And technical contents of exports. Okay, I have only 1 minute, so let me try to summarize the paper. But let me talk about this before I summarize. So technical contents of exports also matter. So here we put the additional variable, which is the high-tech exports, the share of high-tech exports in total manufacturing exports. That is the variable we put here. And that was the significant and negative. So that if you have high technology, which is represented in your exports, then your likelihood of slowdown is lowered. And financial stability also matters. Probably I don't have time to explain this, so let me skip this. And so in this paper, let me try to conclude. In this paper, we try to see what history can say about the growth slowdown, and we found that there are two modes between 1500 and 1600, and between $10,000 and $11,000, and $15,000 and $16,000. And especially many people are talking about China these days, whether it's going to slow down, and we are a little bit optimistic based on our analysis because they have higher average years of schooling than the average slowdown countries, and they have a little bit better high-tech goods in exports. In that sense, China seems to be doing slightly better than average countries, but their level of per capita GDP is, in our modes we found in growth slowdown cases in the history. And so we think that at some point, recently Economist reported a long article a few days ago about the end of the fast-growing BRICS, and we agree with that. So at some point, high growth in low and middle income countries will come to an end. But this doesn't mean that a slowdown is inevitable for every country, because not all countries are equally susceptible, especially if they have high quality human capital or high tech exports, then their slowdown is a little bit less likely than other countries. So let me stop here. Thank you.